Dynamite Network presents Football Time.
Welcome to the Football Time Show. Week 1 is in the books, and we're ready for Week 2. And with us, as always, is our man Dynamite David. Week 1, a fun and entertaining week. Week 2, a tough week to find fun and entertainment, but we press on and find some games we liked. What are your thoughts about Week 1, and then what did you like looking at games in Week 2? Did you find stuff to bet on?
Not a whole lot. I managed to find some that I liked, some favorites I really liked. There's some good games this week, but the really tough lines. There was just some point spreads. I thought the totals was already set low that I was looking at the under, and just a really couple, with that Kentucky-Florida matchup. Yeah. We'll get into that. That's a really good game, but they made that line so tough to play going in Florida. But no, Week 1 was fun. I went in a little optimistic, paid the price for it a little bit, but hoping to bounce back with some solid picks in Week 2. Not a lot of plays, so I probably won't get it all back this week, but I think we'll start getting there. Yeah,
I think we both sort of scaled back a little bit. I know I definitely scaled back on the straight bet side of things. Yeah. I did some goofy stuff, which is what I tend to do when I have nothing to bet on. So I just make goofy things. Ended up losing money that way, but I don't risk as much that way. So we'll see if we can find something. You mentioned it. I think just the lines, with the games not being as good, just seem to be somewhere where I didn't really thought there was an advantage one side or the other.
A lot of heavy favorites this week, and then in the tough games, those lines are just real close. It's really hard to find good value.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into last week. Tough week for you.
Yeah.
You ended up with a $5,715.90 loss. You lost $9,125. You won $34,0910. So. Difficult week, but you're ready to bounce back this week. I came out a nice little profit margin. I won about $668.19. I had 3,818 wins and 3,150 in losses. So got a net positive, a nice little boost paycheck for me for 668. If Illinois had, I just played football and not boggled that game, we both would have been okay. I ended up pushing it on the +3. I know a lot of people ended up losing it, getting that line that went down to 1.5. I think we mentioned it on our show to grab that line as early as can because everybody's going to be betting it. And then you, of course, bet the money line, and you ate all of Brent's poor coaching decisions in that one. So,
probably one of my toughest weeks since we've started doing this podcast. So I'm optimistic that I can improve and bounce back from this one.
Yeah, and that's just sort of week 1. You have your feels, you go on them, and sometimes your feeling is right, and those teams play like they're supposed to and what you think, and sometimes they don't. That's the magic of week 1. You hope you gather knowledge week to week and actually grow and get better by sort of week 4, 5, 6. This is still sort of information gathering. All right, let's break down the games. Let's start out in the ACC. Friday night one, Louisville versus Central Florida. We talked about Louisville versus Syracuse last week and how it was really important for both teams. Syracuse came out and topped. Actually, I thought looked really, really good.
Yeah.
Louisville did not. Central Florida, runaway easy game. I think this is sort of the last chance for Louisville. Scott Satterfield sitting there. If he can't win this one, he got a big win there last year on that sort of fluky pick 6 off Dylan Gabriel when he broke his collarbone. But I think he needs to bounce back and get this win here. How do you see this game playing out here?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I lean heavily on UCF here, especially being the home team in this one. This is one of my picks, and I like this UCF team better than Louisville that's going really downhill.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm a little disappointed because I thought Scott really was a really good coach, and he just hasn't seemed able to find the magic there at Louisville. But that might be some of Louisville as well. They, ever since probably originally Petrino was there. They haven't been able to find a good form. Again, even bringing Bobby back. They just can't seem to find that magic there. There were a couple of years there with Charlie Strong and Lamar Jackson, which gave you a little bit of a boost. But other than that, they just haven't been able to really find a good form in college football for a while now. All right, let's get into some of our ACC bets. I know we both are really, really big on Wake Forest. I got Wake Forest minus the 8 here. I got it the other day before the quarterback was announced to bounce up, and it jumped to 13. Wake Forest versus Vanderbilt. I got the over 60.5. Vanderbilt's been scoring points, and I know Wake Forest can score points. I thought that 60.5 was pretty low, so I got 62.50 on that, 250 on the Wake. Virginia, Illinois. I'm going off my Illinois from what I saw last week.
Yeah.
I thought Virginia played pretty well in a pretty tough trap game. Richmond, I talked about them in that subdivision, that's a difficult game. I thought they played pretty well. Little slow start, but then found their offense. Getting 5 versus Illinois, I thought that's a lot of respect for Illinois. I don't chalk up any home field advantage there. That stadium's going to be empty. So I'm not all that worried about that. I also like the money line, Virginia plus 170. I really thought that was pretty good value. 125 on that. And then we'll go to Duke Northwestern. I got the under 56.5 on that. I got a couple more plays on Duke Northwestern under as well, and in a couple parlays. So like that one, under 56.5. This game is always a gross low-scoring affair. So just because Duke put 30 on Temple, I don't know if that's really 56.5 for those two teams. I don't think that's a number I really, really like. So 62.50 on the under, 56.5 for Duke Northwestern. What are you looking at here in the ACC?
Yeah, I stared at that Virginia-Illinois game for a little while. I wanted to try to give Illinois one more ride, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I don't know, out of not
one
really
player.
not really out of respect out of Virginia, but just I couldn't really go either way. I liked Virginia enough to take any play out of this, but I didn't quite go the other way like you.
Well, they might suck as well.
I didn't take Virginia just because this was just kind of murky water here. But like you said, I didn't take Wake Forest minus the spread at Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt's going to kind of come back to earth.
Yes.
They're going to play a real football team this week.
If you watch, they didn't blow out Elon either.
Yeah.
Elon put points on them. So if Elon's putting points on you, I think Wake is going to put points on
I got this at minus 13. I think as long as you're under 2 touchdowns, you're more than safe here.
I will say I was looking at alternative spreads to put this up in the 20s because I think Wake can get 40, 50 points in this game.
Yeah, especially,
sure.
Their starting quarterback got cleared to play. So I think they're going to be in really good shape. I'm big on North Carolina this week. I think they had, a pretty rough defensive performance last week against App State, but I think they're going to bounce back and really try to dominate a team that they're supposed to dominate in Georgia State. So I've got North Carolina minus the 7.5. And since we went ahead and already talked about this game, I'm going to go ahead and mention this one. I've got UCF minus the 6.5 versus Louisville.
Yeah. The North Carolina one was interesting. I didn't like the road. Back-to-back road. You go to Appy State, and then you go to Atlanta and play in Turner Field versus Georgia State. I don't know who's making their schedule, but they need to have some discussions about going to small schools' home fields.
I think they survived their scare, though.
Yeah.
I think they're going to get a pretty confident, easy win this week.
Yeah, Appy State, much difficult building to go in and play. 2, much better football team. But nonetheless, I just thought it was weird. You open the season versus FAMU, but then you go at Appy State, at Georgia State. It just seemed a bit odd to open in 2 sort of small Sunbelt teams' parks. Let's move to the AAC. Not a ton of huge games here, but I penciled Houston, Texas Tech in here. Texas Tech sprung the upset on them last year versus Houston in that opening game, which pretty much angered me to no other because I had Houston win the conference. They ended up going to the championship game, so not too bad, but a interesting matchup because I thought Texas Tech played really, really well this last week. Hung a bunch of points, sort of back to their old school style with their new coach. Houston, they won the football game. I think is what you could say. You knew it was going to be a tough game going to UT San Antonio. They squeaked by in sort of overtime 2-point conversion type thing. But what do you make of this Houston Texas Tech matchup?
Well, yeah, you talked about Texas Tech kind of getting back to their ways. Now, look at their opponent.
We think.
Yes. I think, Houston's a much tougher team. And I think Texas Tech is an easier team to beat than UTSA.
Yeah.
So I like Houston getting the points here. And I just think, getting that tough game in week one, your team's already there, ready to go. Texas Tech, while it's a confidence booster to get a big win, it's not really the competition you're going to be playing against in these bigger games. So I like to see Houston go in and get another good road win.
Yeah, I think that was the thing that sort of made me pull back a little bit from this game was they go to UT San Antonio, then reverse right back around to another Texas rival at Texas Tech. That's just a hard opening too. Can they get revved up, to play this Texas Tech team? And I didn't know the wild card of what Texas Tech is after that game, so I just sort of pulled back from this one. But I did have a lean a little bit towards Houston, but I just wanted to sort of see more and see how they respond to Texas Tech having two difficult in-state rival road games there. You mentioned UCF -6.5 versus Louisville on the Friday. I don't have any AAC bets. This was a pretty weak slate out of the AAC this week. Last week was a little bit more intriguing, but this week not a ton. So let's flip things around and go to the Big 12. Couple big matchups here. One big non-conference matchup, and I'm not talking about Alabama-Texas. If there's a 20-point spread, I don't consider it a big matchup, but I think I came to you Sunday night after the Alabama game, and I said, is there any chance that Alabama's under 10? And it was not. It was a 20-point favorite for Alabama, so I put this in a game to talk about it because it's two historic football teams, but they have been on different paths for 20 plus years here. Any chance Texas can hang with them half, quarter, game? I
don't think there's any way that anyone that watches football could give me any kind of reason that Texas should win this game or even cover the 20. And honestly, I think I didn't take it, but really under 3 touchdowns is actually pretty. Yeah. Because these teams are on different levels. Texas I think is getting a little respect here, honestly, because they're Texas. But anyone that's played like them the past 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years is probably closer to 30-point dogs. Yes. But Texas they're getting a little bit more credit. But strange things happen in college football sometimes, but I wouldn't predict it this one.
Now, I guess it will be fun for 10 minutes before Alabama, is up 20-0, and then that game rolls. So I want to flip to a game I think is really, really big non-conference-wise, BYU-Baylor.
Oh, yeah.
Tough game for Baylor to go into Provo late at night. BYU ended up the favorite. I thought that line was a bit intriguing. Watched BYU last week on the quick recap, fast game, just watched all the plays, and they looked pretty solid, which they always do, but I'm curious. You couldn't gauge much from the Baylor game. That was not even a worthwhile scrimmage. What do you make of Baylor BYU here? I know you got a play on this game. Are you thinking BYU's just going to be able to, or Baylor's going to be able to control this game and sort of cover that 3.5? Are you playing the number, or do you think Baylor can win outright in this one?
I really like the number here. Yeah. I think this is going to be a really tight game, and first glance, I think Baylor should be the favorite. Yeah. So getting the 3, I like, but I think it's going to be a tight one. But I really look for Baylor. This is a game where if they can go in and get this win, that can really jump, expectations and where they are in this on the national level, going into the rest of their Big 12 conference games. But I like this Baylor team. I think they've built a really good team here and could play pretty well on the road. But should be a really good close matchup. Could come down to the end.
This is one of the few that I was really looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see how Baylor travels to Provo. This would be one that sort of can put them in the, sort of top 10, top 5 if they can roll through the Big 12. This would be a win where you go, oh, they can play with really good teams here. So going into Provo late at night, I think big time game, big sort of see where both these teams are at type of game as well.
Yeah, I like the bold scheduling move, going outside your conference on the road.
Especially since this isn't something Baylor does a ton as well. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. Arizona State, Oklahoma State. We want to take another under here for Oklahoma State. We were a little off on that one by about, 60 points. It seemed like Oklahoma State's defense has gone away, and the fast-paced, high-scoring offense is back. I will say, watching the game, I wasn't totally overwhelmed with the offense. I thought there were mistakes played. I just thought Central Michigan's defense was pretty poor, and actually I thought Oklahoma State's defense was pretty poor as well. So Arizona State, tough game to gauge anything off of versus NAU. You sort of never know what you're going to get with Arizona State. How do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, I see Oklahoma State taking care of business here, but could be another high-scoring affair. But Oklahoma State's really weird because they're a very inconsistent team. They'll have one week where they'll go off for 60. They have another week where it's a 13-7 game. So I think this is probably more likely to be a higher scoring game. But I didn't really see any action that I liked in this one. I just thought it was kind of, I think Oklahoma State should win the game, but by how much, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, from what I saw, they were going to play a ton of possession. So I thought the 55.5. I'm doing a quick adjustment and saying we're back to old school Oklahoma style. So that's one of my bets this week. Oklahoma State, Arizona State, over 55.5, 62.50. I think you're going to get a little bit of an advantage because I don't know if the sports books have caught up yet to Oklahoma State adjustment based off of what they thought last year. Because this seems a little bit low from what I saw in that game, where there were, 10 possessions in the first quarters, and it just led to more and more points, especially as team tired down the stretch there. All right, my next one, Iowa State, Iowa. I bet on this one every year, and basically I bet the same way every year. The team getting points is the team I bet on. Iowa State will be getting the points plus 3.5. I got 250 on that one. I really don't know how to judge this game. Anyone who watched the Iowa-South Dakota State game, I apologize to you, other than if you had South Dakota State, because that was a pretty easy cover considering enough points weren't even scored to cover the spread in that game, total combined. But what do you make of Iowa State, Iowa here? Iowa 3.5-point favorites. Hard to judge Iowa State. Didn't really play anybody.
I looked at this game on the schedule, and I was waiting for those lines to come out, and I was really hoping for a total of around 45, 44, but that was wishful thinking. I think it's sitting around 40 now, may go down even lower. I think this is going to be a really low-scoring game. I'd be shocked to see 4 touchdowns, if that. So I think you may even be safe playing the under 40. I couldn't quite do it just because that's such a low total for college football.
Well, you keep that in mind because there might be some parlays at the end of the show that group together some alternate team total point spreads.
If you like watching that run for 1-yard gains and then punts and turnovers and no scoring, this game will be for you.
Well, maybe they'll get a touchdown this week and not 2 safeties and a field goal. One of the safeties being a purpose one. So, all right, we'll move off of. Did you give your Baylor plus?
Oh yeah, I've just got one pick here. I've got Baylor plus the 3.5, 1 unit, $250 play on that. I really like Baylor getting the 3 plus the hook there. So I'm winning if it's a 3-point game. So I like that edge there. It's going to be a tight one.
Yeah, I think I might talk myself into that eventually by Saturday, especially if it sticks around 3.5, maybe go up to 4. I might grab onto Baylor there. I sort of wanted to see where the line go and where people think these two teams are. All right, the Big Ten. We talked a little bit about Iowa State, Iowa in the one before. We don't have any bets in the Big Ten.
Not a lot of good games.
We're not a lot of good games, so Anything on the Big Ten? I guess we could talk Ohio State, Notre Dame a little bit since we need something to talk about. Ohio State came out. We're not explosive offensively. Looked more solid defensively.
Yeah.
Is Notre Dame's defense that good? Is Ohio State's offense a little bit behind? Because I think going off of week one, I think you can probably say Georgia, Bama, gap, then maybe start throwing in Ohio State and a couple other teams. So what'd you make of that Ohio State-Notre Dame game?
I think it's just Ohio State's probably just wasn't in rhythm just yet. I think that's a really tough, really hyped environment to kind of just come
Their
out.
receiver got hurt too. That I think threw them off a little bit as well.
That was for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Notre Dame, I thought they played pretty good defense, but I think this was more of a just a weak offensive showing for Ohio State. I look for them to step up. And they really like to get their rhythm going against these smaller teams.
Yeah.
So they're going to have some easy matchups here where they're going to put up 60 or 70, get that rolling into the Big Ten Conference, and they should be fine. But not as impressed as I was with what I saw from Georgia, just to come out and dominate, another close to top 10 team in Oregon. I really put Oregon and Notre Dame about the same level. I'd like to see them play each other. But so I just think that shows that Georgia is just, like you said, a whole nother tier above Ohio State. But we'll see where it goes as they get going. They don't have the toughest of schedules, so.
Yeah.
But Notre Dame, I'm not so sure on.
Yeah. I don't have a good read on Notre Dame because their offense was so poor.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we're going to get a lot of this, where their defense can hold up until up until the point of the fourth quarter where they started to wear down, because it was basically just 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And then their defense wore down, and eventually Ohio State, cracked a couple scores there. So everybody came away, big still on Ohio State, moral victory. And I'm not quite sold yet. I want to see that offense score a handful of points here. Speaking of, they might be in a parlay coming up. All right, let's move off the Big Ten and the slow day there. Let's go to Conference USA. Not an action-packed day this week either. UT San Antonio versus Army. I put down UT San Antonio. We talked about the Houston game. Was right there.
Yeah.
Couldn't quite pull it off. Now they go to a road game in Army at noon. I think we both are. We want to take this because we know UT San Antonio's better, but I think we're both a little cautious too about coming off that disappointing Houston game, then going all the way on the road for a noon option team. How do you see this game breaking down?
Well, these are two teams both desperate for a win. Neither one of these teams want to start off the year 0-2. Army had a tough game last week. They competed well early against Coastal Carolina, but couldn't quite hang with them. But UTSA went down to the overtime game loss against Houston. I think UTSA's got a little bit of a challenge, with the early start, going on the road a good distance. But I think they're the better team here, and under a field goal, I think is a pretty good spot for them.
Yeah.
But they've got to come out with their A game early. If they let Army control the pace of this game, it could be a tough one.
Yeah, I'm playing off that, getting into my bet. So I think UT San Antonio might start off a little slow, and then they'll have to grow into that game. So I actually didn't take the spread in this one. I took UT San Antonio -1.5 second half. I think by the second half, once, the sort of last week lets off a little bit, they get their bearings on that option offense, they wake up a little bit after the early start out of New York, and then they sort of get it rolling, find their tempo, and sort of grind away Army, like you sort of saw Coastal Carolina do, too.
Yeah.
Where they went back and forth a little bit. It was a tight game, and then Coastal just sort of pulled away towards the back end. So I thought 1.5 was a pretty good number. Even though the overall number I think is pretty good too. I got UT San Antonio, a couple other, exotic actions as well. But so I have UT San Antonio -1.5 second half for 250 for me. What are you looking at?
I've got UT San Antonio minus the 2 at Army. I've got a 1 unit $250 play on that. I think they're a good team. I've liked this team. I regretted not taking them last week. I secretly really like the Roadrunners. So I look for them to go into Army and get the win. And then I have my first big big play of the week. It's kind of crazy. 2 0-2 teams. I like New Mexico State going into UTEP. Now, like I said, both these teams started.
Kind of crazy. I think these two teams are pretty used to starting the year 0-2.
I guess I'm the kind of crazy one for betting on this game. But what I like here is New Mexico State's getting 14. And, they both have. UTEP had a little bit of closer games, but
Yes.
I don't like either of these teams. And I look back, and I'm just looking at trends here.
Yeah.
Past couple of years, New Mexico State, they tend to cover a lot of these games that they lose early on in the season, and UTEP has only covered the spread in one of most of their September games the past year. So purely going off that, but I liked getting 2 touchdowns between two bad teams. I'll take those points any day.
Yeah.
$500 play on that.
Dynamite with a $500 play on the New Mexico State. I told him that might be the most money ever wagered in one game on New Mexico State. So New Mexico State plus 14, $500 versus UTEP. A showdown. He will be on ESPN Plus watching that exciting matchup, I'm sure.
I feel obligated to now. I don't know if even Plus will have that.
All right, let's move on to the MAC. There were no marquee games in the MAC.
No.
I had no bets out of the MAC, so not a lot to break down here. What do you like bet-wise out of the MAC?
I'm going back to 2 teams that have started off with losses here. Western Michigan went into Michigan State, and I thought played them better than a lot were expecting, and kind of had a few turnovers that really flipped the game quick. But I thought competed, and they're going in against a Ball State that was never really in the game against Tennessee. And Western Michigan's just under a touchdown favorite here, so I was going to take Western Michigan minus the 6.5. I've got a 3-unit play. This is one of my best bets of the week. Really like Western Michigan here, minus the 6.5.
Yeah, they're in my parlay. I just didn't want to. I got a couple of Macs in my parlay. I think I just didn't want to be overly aggressive on Macs off of sort of week 1 where either they were getting killed or playing teams that they were going to kill. It was sort of one way or the other. Either you were the roadkill or you were playing the roadkill. So I sort of just put them in a handful of like exotic parlays and teasers and stuff like that. Let's move to the Mountain West. One game. I don't know if it's big, but I've been.
This is your game.
Yes,
here.
I know. I must say, I think I've been guilted in betting on this game a little bit. But UNLV goes to California. UNLV 14-point underdogs in this one. I think this is important because this is probably one. I don't know if you say UNLV needs to win, but if they want to sort of be taken seriously, they at least need to make this game close. They should strive to be a program like Cal, which is good enough to sort of win 6 games a year. So,
be great for UNLV.
Yes, it would. It would be great for UNLV. What do you make of this UNLV Cal matchup? Because basically you've guilted me into taking it. Now, I've only put it in exotics, and yet I'm the UNLV lover here. But what do you make of UNLV Cal?
This is another one where, I think Cal can probably get the win here.
Yeah.
But I like the way this UNLV team can put up points and getting 13, albeit on the road. It's not – we've seen these Pac-12 teams, these home games. They may be like 3,000 people at this game. So I don't think the home field is really that big of a factor other than the travel, which isn't that much. So I like the 13 points here. So I think this could be Cal's not known for putting up, a ton of points. So to beat somebody by 13, I think is asking a lot out of a semi-decent UNLV team.
This is probably punishment for me sending you text message every time UNLV scored a touchdown in the Week 0 game. As I got pumped up as they beat a nobody. But nonetheless, UNLV Cal. I do have one play in the Mountain West, and I think we're both on this one pretty good. Anyone who watched Colorado play TCU, they can't stop the run.
Yeah.
And when you're playing Air Force, that tends to be a bit of a key. I believe they gave up 345 yards and about 9 yards a carry to about 15 different backs out of TCU. So that being said, yes, this number is really, really big. I don't tend to take huge
Yeah.
numbers, but I thought 17 versus Colorado. You saw Air Force last week lit up Northern Iowa, which is something Iowa and Iowa State seem to struggle to do in week one.
We thought that could be a trap
Yes,
game, and Air Force really took care of
business.
business.
Was not.
Yeah.
So I look for the same here. Plus, I think they'll sort of relish beating the crap out of Colorado just as
in-state rivalry.
Yeah, as they think those are the better players, but really Air Force is the better players. So I like that 17, so I'm going 250, Air Force minus 17 for me. What are your other plays out of the mountain?
Yeah, I've got 250 on Air Force as well. I just think they're going to come out and just impose their will in this one. I'm taking another 17-point favorite in conference. I'm looking for Boise State. Big bounce back against a weak opponent at New Mexico. I think they're going to come in and really try to just wash the taste of that bad performance last week out of their mouths. And then we talked about it a little bit. I'm also taking UNLV plus the 13. All of those are $250 plays for me.
Yeah, I had one more play. I took the Boise team total over 30.5. I did 125 on that. I think they'll sort of bounce back versus New Mexico, score a lot of points. Breckenmeyer looked awful last week versus Oregon State. The freshman kid who came in, I don't know how that's going to sort of work itself out, but I think you're okay. Either Breckenmeyer versus New Mexico, you're probably safe, and if the new kid comes in there, then I look for them to score over 30.5 in that game. So team total, Boise State, 30.5, 125 for me. All right, let's move to the Pac-12. Actually, some decent games out of the Pac-12 this week. Let's start with the big one, USC Stanford. One we differ on. I think one we differ on every year. I always ride Stanford and getting the points in this game because I know exactly what they're going to do. Really nothing to take from USC other than they were capable of scoring points on Rice. They got a couple pick sixes. I don't know if that's translatable, but what do you make of USC Stanford here?
Yeah, I think this is a game where Lincoln Riley's really going to want to make a statement, and I don't think this is the Stanford team we've seen in previous years' matchups against USC, and this is definitely a different USC team with the transfers he's brought in here. Very potent offense, and I think his play calling and style is going to be enough to really bury Stanford on this one, even though this was another one on the road.
Yeah. Really, I think more so what I was thinking is you've seen Lincoln Riley teams struggle with teams that play this a style like Stanford's and David Shaw's, where they slow the game down and eat up clock. So if they are capable of getting that, I'm not exactly buying USC's defense as all of a sudden capable of stopping people because they got a couple pick sixes versus Rice. I do wonder if Stanford can control this game and then that shrinks it down. Yeah, I think USC will end up coming out on top, but I don't think it'll be as big a blowout. This one always seems to be a little tight, certainly when they're going up north to play at Stanford. So my play here is really the under 64.5. I thought that was a really high total for a Stanford team who never has any intention of playing a game much outside of over 40 points. So I got 62.50 on the under 64.5 on USC Stanford. I do kind of like that 9. I might talk myself into it. I believe it's in a couple of my parlays. Let's go to the next one. The team that played Boise State, Oregon State.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Looks
now
like
they got to go take the other side of the Mountain West and mess with them in Fresno. I really like this. I love the way Oregon State played. Hit huge explosive plays. Yeah, they got a ton of turnovers, but they were aggressive in forcing those turnovers. Can they go to Fresno State and win this? What do you make of Oregon State, Fresno State?
Yeah, this is one I really wanted to take Oregon State here, but I think I got to see it one more week from them. Oregon State, they've always proven that they can come up and get some weird big-time wins, play really well, and then they drop the ball later on. So if they can get this back
certainly at home, not going on the road here.
Yeah, if they can get this going on the road back-to-back and come out and play really well again, I may look to play on Oregon State some more in the future. Now, the value may disappear at that time because they're probably going to be ranked pretty high if they start out with a win against Boise State and Fresno State. Heck, they're going to be right there with the top of the guys in the Pac-12. But this was kind of a wait and see for me.
Well, certainly after what we saw from Oregon.
Yeah. So really just a wait and see if they come out and play well again this week. You'll probably see some Morgan State bets from me in the future.
All right, let's move to the last one. Arizona, Mississippi State. Mississippi State took care of business versus Memphis. Played pretty well and also sort of negotiated that weird little delay that always seems to throw things off. Arizona, the Dream Killers, to you. We talked about it in our show last week about how it needed to be a statement for Arizona to play with San Diego State. They made that statement and more so, really lighten them up. Any chance they can creep up and beat a Mississippi State team here? I must say I saw this line. I wanted to jump on Mississippi State. And then I've talked myself out of it as a weird little trap game of Mississippi State going so far west, and it just, I couldn't make myself do it. So what do you make of this Arizona Mississippi State?
Yeah, I think this is another one you may want to. I didn't write it down as one of my picks, but I'm not sure exactly where the over's at here. Mississippi State's going to score a lot of points. They're going to be, they don't run the ball. Their running plays are dishes to the running back, so it's going to be fast paced, easy dink and dunks all the way down the field. But I was really curious to see what Arizona could do here. Getting that, I think it was 10.5.
Yes.
So Arizona really surprised me. San Diego State, one of my biggest plays last week, swing and a miss on that one, and for a team that had 0 wins last year, I believe, to come out and get a really good statement win in week 1. Honestly, it would be a win if they could cover the spread here, and I think they're going to be going for that. So I just marked off. I didn't have a play here.
Yeah, I looked at the total as well, certainly on the over. The only thing that sort of pulled me back was I could also see this being like 38-8. Mississippi State has probably much, much better talent, but you wonder if maybe Arizona can carry that offense over, and we get more like 38-24 type a game here, and Arizona sort of hangs in and around and plays better. They certainly looked good, and it's never any joke to hang 38 points on San Diego State. We know they always play defense, so real bit of a shocking one there with Arizona. Certainly the margin. I think, I don't know necessarily the win, though that was a little shocking. I think the margin and the way they just manhandled them, and you're like, oh, this game's over first quarter. And you're just like, wow. So I think this will be a really entertaining one to watch and see how Arizona sort of grows from that game to this game, and see if Mississippi State can sort of handle this one, because their schedule only gets more and more difficult as it goes on. So let's get in our bets here in the Pac-12. I mentioned USC Stanford under 64.5. I got 62.50 on that, and then I'm going to keep riding Oregon State plus the 1.5 versus Fresno State. 250 for me on that one. What do you got out of the Pac-12?
I just got the USC play -9 at Stanford. I've got a 3 units, $750. I'm going big on this one. I would probably take this all the way up to -13. I think they're going to win by 2 touchdowns. Easy ride here for USC.
I think so. It'll be an interesting one to watch. We'll see what they can do.
Gotta stay up late for that.
You're staying up late for Baylor, BYU, and USC, Stanford. All right, let's move to the SEC, where there are actually some entertaining games. South Carolina versus Arkansas. I think we're both a little bit intrigued by this one, because we differ on this one. I don't know if we actually differ. I think I differ. I like the points here. You like Arkansas here and the spread. But how do you see this one playing out? Arkansas, nice win versus Cincinnati. I honestly, though, I thought Cincinnati probably played better. They just left a handful of plays on the field. But Arkansas does what they do and finds a way to win, even though you aren't 100% sure how they go about it. But I think that's my point with grabbing South Carolina, because I think South Carolina is sort of the east side of this. They sort of do things, you watch them, you go, they aren't all that good, and then they win, which is sort of what they did last week. They ended up covering. They didn't look great, but they come out on top. And I think this game will be that, where it's just two teams sort of head-to-head, banging each other around, and then something fluky will happen towards the end, and that'll be the team that grabs it. So how do you think the South Carolina-Arkansas game is going to play?
Yeah, I think this is another one. I was more impressed with Arkansas than I was South Carolina last week. Just, I think the Cincinnati team deserves a little bit more respect. Now, like you said, they had opportunities to win that game, and Arkansas was actually fortunate to come out with a win. But they did cover the spread for me last week. They're staying at home again. Another game in Fayetteville against South Carolina. I think that's what put me over the top here on this one. I just think it's going to be really tough for South Carolina to go in and play a team that I guess the past couple of years is getting used to being one of the middle to top tier teams in the West. Arkansas, played really well last year. An experienced quarterback. I just think this isn't the one for South Carolina, especially being on the road.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. We already talked Wake Forest Vanderbilt a little bit. I don't know if we need to dive back into it. Let's talk Mizzou Kansas State. Mizzou got the win. Kansas State actually I thought played pretty well. Despite playing a low level team, but ran the ball like Kansas State does. I'm curious your feel on this one. Because I think I wanted to take Kansas State because I think they're just going to pummel them up the middle. But a part of me just couldn't quite take that spread. This is one of those we were talking about at the start of the show. Where I think I came in thinking I'm grabbing Kansas State. And then I saw that line hovering around 8. And I'm like, I don't like that much because I don't really know what Mizzou is. I know what Kansas State is, but I don't know if that's 8 point better than Missouri. So how do you see this game playing out?
Yeah, you hit it on the head when you said Missouri's kind of the big question mark. Are they going to come out and score, 30, 35, 40 points, or are they just going to come out and just be turnover machines? We know Kansas State. They're going to come out. They're going to run the ball 90% of the time. They're going to play ball control and hard-nosed defense. So I'm not playing the spread here, but I do have some action on this game.
Yeah, I think it's easy for me to talk myself into Kansas State because I've seen Missouri play these type of teams, and they mostly get rolled. They get pushed up front, and running backs have career days. Usually 3 or 4 running backs have career days versus them. But then I don't know what to read off of that Mizzou team because I didn't get a good feel for them in that Louisiana Tech game. They were sort of good, but sort of not good, which probably is their team motto. So I just couldn't get a read. Maybe by if the spread drops off like a key number of like down to 7, I might grab Kansas State here, but as long as it's staying in that 7.5, 8 point range, I just can't quite grab Kansas State, and I don't think you could convince me to sort of take Mizzou any point total. Maybe if it climbed over the double-digit mark, but even then, like I said, I get a little scared that Kansas State, they had 600 yards rushing today on 20 carries or something because Mizzou's front couldn't stand up to them. Let's move to probably the 2 biggest games left in the SEC, depending on Alabama, Texas, but I think these games will be a lot more closely played than that one. Let's go Tennessee, Pittsburgh.
Yep.
You gauge nothing really off Tennessee in the opening week, just a doormat, and that might be an insult to doormats with the way Ball State played. Thanks for the field goal, though, with a minute to go to screw over that over-under, though. Good thing it was 59-10 and not 7. But nonetheless, Pittsburgh, Virginia, entertaining game to watch, but I didn't come away thinking either team looked all that great. Yeah. So how are you sort of handicapping this one? Because I think we were both also stunned by the number that came out with 7 for Tennessee on the road here.
Yeah, I'm not sure, what really makes people think that Tennessee is 7-point favorite on the road against a higher ranked opponent, other than the fact that preseason opinions of Tennessee were higher than of Pittsburgh and they lost Kenny Pickett. But, week 1 to week 2, I don't think that really makes a huge difference. But I think this is a really tough situation for Tennessee to be going into because Narduzzi's really going to have this team ready. He's going to be playing, hey, we're the dogs at home. He made a big deal about there being more West Virginia fans in Pittsburgh for that game last week. So they're really playing kind of that underdog role. And so this really feeds right into his narrative that's going to help. I think Tennessee's probably got more weapons offensively, especially with Pitt losing Kenny Pickett. But they struggled to get things going against West Virginia, but, Tennessee's defense,
Yeah.
they did win 59-10, but it wasn't that impressive. So I think the 7.5 is a really tough spread for this game. I think it's going to be a close one, but I could also see it going really big in either team's way. I'm staying way away from this game. I don't think there's any good action that anyone could really give me a reason to convince me to bet on this.
Especially with the over-under number being hovering almost to about 70 there at 67.
If this line was, total is about 60-61, you could talk me into the over. But at 66, 67, you could almost talk me into the under.
Well, with the way you sort of saw Pittsburgh also pull back a little bit on that high offensive style from last year, so they might try to slow this game down as well.
Yeah, I don't
certainly at home.
Yeah, I definitely don't think he could be, but I don't think Slovis is the NFL future quarterback like Pickett was.
Yeah, he might be on a fun training camp roster when I tell you, oh look, he got time in the fourth quarter. But I don't think he'll at least get probably quite the shot unless something comes along. Way too many turnovers for Slovis there. All right, let's go to Florida, Kentucky.
Game of the week.
I think. Kentucky took care of business versus Miami, Ohio. They do it how they normally do it. But I must say, of the teams I was impressed by last week, Florida was probably, top of the charts.
Yep.
Maybe Georgia because of the score, but I think we all sort of expected what Georgia was going to be, one of the top teams. To watch Florida, you were in that wild card area of can Napier get a system, get those guys playing the way, he wants them to play, and versus an opponent like Utah, who I thought played well too. That was just a really good football game of two really good football teams. And Florida came out ahead, made the last play there on that interception right on the goal line to come away with a win. I'm curious to see if they can do it again versus Kentucky, who is another team like Utah who likes to play line of scrimmage games, both fronts, and see if Florida can do that. How do you feel this Florida-Kentucky game is going to go? Because I like you said, I think this might be one of the games of the week.
Yeah, looking at Florida, my opinion on them has drastically changed after week one. You called it. You were talking about can Napier implement what he wanted to do year one. I think it was a huge blessing that he had a guy like Anthony Richardson there. Being
just
able to
perfect quarterback for him.
Oh, yeah. Just a guy that's, really going to just run the ball, not force anything. His passing is going to be his weakness, obviously, but I don't think they're going to really ask him to do a whole lot. So I think teams are going to...
I thought he passed well on those short yardage and made the right read. You said it.
Yeah.
He didn't get over-aggressive and, cause a turnover that would hurt them coming back the other way.
Yeah, and this is a Florida team. I think they're going to really lean on their defensive talent and just do enough on offense to get the wins. It's not going to be as pretty as Florida teams we've seen in the past, but this is still a really talented team, and I definitely respect Florida a lot more now. And preseason, I think I had Kentucky right there with Florida, kind of that 2-3 or 3-4 spot in the SEC East. I do like Kentucky getting points, but this is going to be a good one. Yeah. And I don't have a lean either direction.
I think it'll be good to see where Kentucky sits as well.
Yeah.
If they're capable of sort of being that second team under Georgia as well.
I think if either one of these teams are wanting to finish, like you said, in that second spot, this is a must-win. I don't think you lose this game, and then because they both play Georgia, they're going to get that other loss. And then, and Tennessee. So I don't think the loser of this game comes out with less than 3 or 4 SEC losses. So really huge game for both of these teams.
Yeah, definitely tuning in for this one. All right. I think I have my both straight bets out of this SEC here. Now, granted, they are of two teams, so not a lot of volume, but a lot of depth here with Alabama, South Carolina. Alabama first half, minus 12.5, 250 for me. Alabama game, minus 20, 250. If you are betting on Alabama, I would take those now because, honestly, I think that gets up to 24 by game time.
Oh, yeah.
Because I just don't know who would take Texas. So I grab those as early as you can. So first half, 12.5, 250 Alabama minus 22.50. South Carolina plus the 8.5. I got 500 on that one, taking the points. I also have South Carolina on the money line plus 270, 125 there. And then South Carolina, Arkansas under 52.5, 62.50 on that one for me. What do you got going on the SEC side of things?
I've got in that Missouri-Kansas State game, I'm taking the under 57. I think this is going to be a slugfest, real ugly football game. So I've got 250 on the under 57 there. And then I'm going the other way. I'm taking Arkansas minus the big spread, 8.5 versus South Carolina. I've got 250 on that as well. So a big head-to-head game for us there.
All right. Head-to-head, Arkansas, South Carolina. The Tex will be flying. All right, let's go to the Sun Belt. Marshall, Notre Dame, I put down. We already touched on it a little bit with Notre Dame in the Ohio State game. What do you think we're getting from Marshall here? I thought this spread was a little big, 20.5.
Yeah.
But, do you think Marshall can hang with them a little bit?
Yeah, I actually almost made a play here.
Yeah.
You talked about Notre Dame a little bit. This might not be a team that comes out and really blows anybody out. And Marshall's, they had a surprisingly bad year last year from what we thought they were going to be. But they're a pretty decent team, and I think 3 touchdowns is being quite generous here. So I almost made a play here, and it wouldn't shock me if Marshall's in this game.
Yeah, I just, the way I watched Notre Dame's offense, I thought Marshall could, they could scrimmage 7 to 10 points, and I don't know if Notre Dame can get much over, 24. That they just didn't seem to be that, unless Marshall's defense is really, really bad.
Or they give up some turnovers that lead to
turnovers
points.
would. But my guess is they go into Notre Dame with a pretty conservative game plan and just sort of grind this out and see who can sort of pop out on top. All right, any Sun Belt bets for you?
Yeah, this is one I was looking at. App State almost pulled off the big upset against North Carolina. I don't know if App State, if it's really on the upset level. I would put those teams almost even there, but App State
honestly, if you look at their football histories, App State's might be better.
But so App State, goes from one Power 5 team to even a bigger Power 5 team in Texas A&M on the road, going into the
Texas
home.
A&M's history is better than App State.
Yes, and going into the home of the 12th man. But App State proved to me they can put some points up. Now, it was against a really bad North Carolina defense, and A&M's defense is much better. But I thought this total was a little low for this game at 52.5, so I'm taking the over in App State at Texas A&M, over 52.5, and I got 250 on that.
Yeah. I have one subdivision play, but it's a subdivision play without a number quite yet. But Lafayette versus Temple, I have the under. Whatever that number is going to be, I'm just going to take it. Lafayette won 6-0 last week in their subdivision game. Temple failed to score on Duke. So I'm going in blind 62.50. Now, if the number comes out and it's like 25, I'll tweet out that it's a cross-off. But right now, as long as it's starting out in the 40s, I'm probably taking Lafayette Temple under 62.50. Any other plays for you before we get into some of our fun exotics?
I think those are all my straight bets. I just have a few parlays for us.
Yeah, we're going to let you dive into your parlays before I have to go on a 25-minute rant.
Why don't you get a drink here real quick?
Cover my.
I just started off with a few. One with my big, my big underdog play, and I took him on a money line here just because it's really good value. And I think it could be a closer game than what this line indicates. So I've got a 2-team play with one of my favorite underdogs this week. I've got Houston money line and New Mexico State money line going into UTEP. That gives me plus 950. I've got half a unit, $125 play on that. I'm going to take Houston in another 2-teamer parlay with Baylor, who's getting 3.5 now. And that game.
Ooh, I kind of like that one. That might be added to the 2-team underdog parlays that I have.
But the 2 Texas money line parlay, that gave me plus 410. I've got a 1 unit, $250 play on it. And then this one is just my favorites parlay. These are my best bets of the week. I've got Western Michigan minus 6.5, North Carolina minus 7.5. USC minus 9 for $5.96. I got $250 on that one.
All right, 3 parlays. I might dive in on that Houston.
Let's see if I can hit one leg of my parlays this week.
You hit one team in your parlays last week. So, I might dive in on that Houston Baylor plus 410. That's pretty good value there in 2 toss-up games. All right. we got a long way to go here. We didn't have a ton of straight bets this week, and we just put a lot of exotics together. So we're going to go first with our 10-point teaser here. Florida, UNC, and Memphis. That's a 10.3 team teaser for $250 on that one. We got a 13-point teaser at minus 140. That's Iowa State, Virginia, Baylor, and Oregon State. So that's a 4-team, 13-point teaser. Iowa State, Virginia, Baylor, Oregon State. And then we're going to do a 7-point teaser on totals here. We're going Tennessee versus Pitt on the over. That makes it 60. Arizona State, Oklahoma State. That makes it over 50.5. And Texas Tech, Houston, over 56.5. So that's a 7-point tease, 3-team, $500 on that one. And then two of my favorites. We're going to alternate line, 2-team parlay, plus 712, Duke Northwestern, under 52, Iowa State, under 34. So that parlay is plus 712. Not bad value there for a 2-team parlay. And then a 2-team alternate line parlay at plus 410. We're going to drop, we're going to raise up UT San Antonio's line to 6.5, just under that key number of 7. And then we're going to raise up Oregon State's line minus 2.5, just under that key number of 3. That one pays 410 for 2-team alternate line parlays. All right. Now, let's get into our 2-team underdog parlays. All these are going to be 62.50. Northern Illinois and MTSU, that 2-team parlay is 9.2 to 1. So plus 923 on that one. Stanford Duke, that one. 14 to 1 on that 2-team parlay. So a lot of value there, Stanford and Duke. Our next one, this one's a fun one. Ride or die. You talked me into UNLV, so we're going to ride UNLV on the money line at plus 440. And then a sneaky one, Kansas, who dominated last week. The most points they've scored probably since, I don't know, the early 2000s when they were playing in the Sugar Bowl, plus 410. So that parlay is a 26 to 1. So 26 to 1 2-team parlay. So 2-team underdog parlay, 26 to 1. A lot of value there. So you can win a lot of money if Kansas and UNLV win outright on a 2-team parlay. All right, and then our last one, the no spreads underdog parlay of subdivision teams. I mentioned Lafayette and Temple. I watched Temple. I had Temple. I did not watch the Lafayette 6-0 win over, I don't remember who, but it was another very small school. But I'm assuming this game is probably going to be awful and close. So I'm going to ride Lafayette and Eastern Washington over Oregon after what I saw from Oregon. Honestly, I think whatever this number is, I'd take a peek at it because Eastern Washington is one of the very good top-tier subdivision teams. And, Oregon was just really, really bad. I don't see how that offense improves. Bo Nix was awful, which tells me that Ty Thompson, who's backing him up, has to be really, really bad if that is what they chose to play quarterback. So I'd look at the Eastern Washington, even if you aren't going to do this 2-team parlay with Lafayette and Eastern Washington. But I'm going to have that also as well when those lines go up 62.50. All right, let's go into my regular 3-team parlays just on spread. We hit a couple of these. We were 2 out of 5 on 3-team parlays last week. So we bolstered it up and did even more. We're going to go on ones that don't have a spread yet. Eastern Kentucky over Bowling Green. I thought Eastern Kentucky played pretty well versus Eastern Michigan last week. Dropped down a level to Bowling Green. I think they can cover that one. Western Kentucky versus Western Carolina versus Georgia Tech. Anyone who watched Georgia Tech play football last week, I apologize to you. Granted, they still should have covered that game. I'm not sold on the Clemson offense quite yet either. But you get 2 block punts. Things quite helpful there. And then I mentioned it, Marshall plus the 20.5 for my 3-team parlay in that one. Eastern Kentucky, Western Carolina, Marshall plus 20.5. Next one. we're going to go MTSU, Northern Illinois, and Kansas plus the 13.5 in that one. So MTSU plus the 7.5 versus Colorado, Northern Illinois plus the 6.5 versus Tulsa, and Kansas plus the 13.5 versus West Virginia. All right, next up, 3-team spread parlay of the subdivisions. Lafayette, Eastern Washington, we already talked on our money line parlay. Now we're going to do whatever spread releases on the 3-team parlay and then throw in Northern Colorado. I think going to Wyoming, Northern Colorado, not the greatest subdivision team, but I have not been overly impressed with Wyoming, even though they won me money last week. They aren't going to be weirded out by playing in Laramie because they're from Northern Colorado. So basically, they are in Laramie as well. So that one, Lafayette, Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado, the subdivision 3-team parlay special. And then the next one, the Syracuse, minus 21.5 versus UConn. I couldn't quite talk myself into a 21.5 point spread on straight bets for Syracuse, but I really, really like that one. I thought the Lafayette minus 10.5 versus Eastern Michigan line was pretty solid, and then Memphis minus 6.5 versus Navy. Anyone who watched Navy last week, they're really, really bad at football right now. So I think Memphis, even though they had a tough week versus Mississippi State, should be able to go in there. So Syracuse, Lafayette, Memphis in that 3-team parlay. 2 more to go. We're almost there. All right. Marshall plus the 20.5 in the game versus Notre Dame. Kansas and UNLV in that one. And then lastly, my favorite, the Sun Belt Special. We're going Western Michigan minus the 6.5. Central Michigan minus the 5. And the big one, Toledo minus the 28 versus UMass in that one.
I think you mean MAC special.
What did I say?
You said Sunbelt special.
Oh, MAC special. I meant
was
MAC
like, these are all MAC teams here, guy.
That is correct. They are all MAC teams. I think MAC special is correct. The MAC special. Western Michigan, Central Michigan, Toledo.
I'm the MACtion guy here.
3-team parlay for me. So
I'll have to say that I'm a little inspired. I'm going to be checking out those teasers. A lot of interesting action you've put together this week.
if I can just hit this one parlay right here, UNLV Kansas money line. Let's go.
You'd be fired up coming into work that night.
I will be. All right, let's take a minute to check out all our picks on the slideshow. Week 2 is upon us. Are you ready to get into some college football Week 2 action? Let's hope our bets hit well.
I need a better week.
You need a better week this week. I think you're going to have a better week this week. Be sure to be on the lookout. Our NFL show, we'll be recording that tomorrow. That will drop tomorrow. So we also got the NFL preview up. You want to check that out. If you want to check the college football preview as well, you can check that out. It's probably still relevant.
Yeah, my Utah to make the playoffs bet's looking real good.
Ignore any Nebraska picks on that one. That was done earlier. But yeah, sure. Check it out. Follow the Greenlight Network channel. That's our show, and we're out.
Greenlight Network presents Football Time.